Opening day is canceled. The first series of the year, the second series of the year. Commissioner Rob Manfred said yesterday at a press conference that those two series are canceled as these two sides could not reach an agreement yesterday. Any kind of momentum and hope that there was from the day prior seems to have been at least partially manufactured by the league in an effort to kind of twist the narrative. So we'll get into what broke down and what is to come with this lockout next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide episodes 3 days a week until the lockout ends, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already. And coming up on today's show, we're going to break down what broke down, what went wrong between the league and the players yesterday, following up after they met for 16 and a half hours the day prior. There was actually some optimism. And on our show yesterday, we talked about that there was a real possibility a deal could be reached yesterday, which seemed impossible entering the previous day. But if it seems too good to be true, I guess it probably is, and that was the case here. And the players are basically accusing the league of this being a tactic where they kind of created this sense of momentum and pushed to the media that there was momentum. And then the next day, they come around and say that the players had, their tone had changed. And then the league made what it called, although Rob Manfred denied that they said this, but the Players Association is saying clearly that the league said it was its best and final offer that it presented to the players right before this artificial deadline of 5 p.m. Eastern, after which time the league was going to cancel games. And that's ultimately what happened. But they made this best and final offer and will give you what was in that offer. And it was clearly not one that was going to be accepted by the players. And so they reject it. They vote unanimously to reject this proposal, and it's completely understandable why when you look at the way these negotiations have gone. It's just clearly not numbers that were going to be accepted. And then because of the artificial momentum that the league is claiming existed, then at least there's going to be some blame out there by fans kind of saying that the players changed their tone. And so, yeah, the players are accusing the league of this being a tactic, and I'm sure it is, at least to some extent. There's no way that they thought that this best and final offer, although, again, they're denying that they called it that, would be accepted. So let's get into what the league offered and what the players are seeking in return. It's really not that the differences are mostly just the numbers themselves, as opposed to the players seeking transformative change to the way that the whole economic structure of the game changes, which seemed like a possibility at some points leading up to the expiration of this collective bargaining agreement. But basically, I mean, for example, the luxury tax. There's no rule that there even has to be a luxury tax, and it doesn't benefit the players. They would prefer that it just go away, but yet the players are still operating under having a luxury tax. They just want the thresholds to be higher and the penalties to not increase. So the players' union, according to John Heyman, has requested for the first threshold to start at $238 million and then for it to increase by $6 million each year for the first 4 years of the deal, and then to increase by $7 million in the last year of the deal. The league, meanwhile, is proposing in their best and final offer, apparently, according to the Players Association, it can't really be their best and final offer because they have to continue to negotiate. So that we stand at a very perilous moment here because neither side really feels like it can make another proposal because the league has said it's its best offer, and the players' union, I heard it from their lead negotiator in a press conference yesterday, saying that a best and final offer means basically don't bother counter proposing. So anyway, the league is proposing $220 million in the first year, $220 million in the second year, $220 million in the third year. So no increases for the first 3 years, and then $224 and $230 in the last 2 years of the deal. So a big difference there. And then the other kind of major difference that I'm seeing is in the pre-arbitration bonus pool. The players have dropped their request to $85 million. This is a whole new concept. We haven't had a pre-arbitration bonus pool in the past. The players want $85 million, but again, they started out these negotiations wanting players with 2+ years of service time to reach free agency, as opposed to the way it is now, to reach arbitration. The way it is now, you have to have 3+ years of service, with the exception being the top 22% of players in terms of service between 2 and 3 years also reaching arbitration. So the players initially sought to expand that to 100% of players between 2 and 3 years of service reaching arbitration, but they've completely dropped that. So that's significant. The players have moved off of their more extreme positions, so they're proposing keeping it at 22% between 2 and 3 years, but creating this $85 million bonus pool, which they initially sought in excess of $100 million, all the way up to $115 at one point. So they're proposing it to start at $85 million with an increase of $5 million a year. The league, in its quote best and final offer, proposed $25 million. All right, so coming up next, we're going to talk about the ramifications here. The league deciding to cancel games. It's going to add a whole new level of complexity to these negotiations when we start to think about service time. As games are missed, players potentially won't be able to gain a full year of service, even if they play a full season, if it's shorter than it should have been. And there are other complications as well. And then eventually, also, we're going to talk about the National League West bullpens as we continue our run through the division, comparing every team in all these different categories. So stay tuned for that. But first, football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to baseball as well. Apparently today, one of our fellow Locked On hosts just put out on Twitter that BetOnline set an over-under for the number of games in the season, and I think it's like 120.5. And right away, I honestly might take the over on that, but they do have odds up there right now on betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, here we go. We're going to continue talking about the fallout of the league deciding to announce that it's canceling the first 2 series of the regular season. So we'll talk about the fallout and what this means and why it adds a whole new level of complexity to the negotiations and what's to come next. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. That show is free and available wherever you get podcasts. So I want to talk about the fallout and why this cancellation of games brings a whole new level of complexity to these negotiations. First of all, player pay. The league, Rob Manfred had a press conference yesterday, worth watching if you're into what's going on here. He had a press conference, and also the Players Association had a press conference, and you can find those on YouTube if you just search for them. But Rob Manfred said that it's their position that players will not be paid for games missed. And the players, of course, said it is their position that they should be paid for games that ultimately get missed. And so that's just a whole nother thing that they're going to have to fight about in these negotiations. And it is no small deal at all. The league presumably wants to squeeze out the players and put pressure on them by forcing them to miss salary. I mean, there's an article in the Associated Press that details exactly what's at stake here, pointing out that the top paid players, like for example Max Scherzer, would lose $1,000 per day if he doesn't get paid for the games that are ultimately missed. And the total cost for all players based on last year's base salaries would come out to $20.5 million per day. And that's not per game, that's per day, counting all the scheduled off days as well. Of course, the league would be missing out on money as well from ticket sales, and it's a little bit confusing with television deals. I don't know exactly how that works out, but at a certain point, they would start to lose money from their television deals and have to pay some of it back, is my understanding. But that's just one factor. And then also there's service time. In this article in the Associated Press, they also make the point correctly that starting at 15 days missed, it would be impossible for players who have exactly X amount of years of service, say 0, 1, 2, 3 years of service, even if they play every day, if the league doesn't, if it's not negotiated that, say the full season is 120 games, if you are only getting 120 days of service out of a possible 187 in a full season, it doesn't count as a year of service time. You need 172 days to get a full year of service time. So if there's less than 172 days in the season, unless the players are able to negotiate for this, it's possible that they will not get a full year of service. And then every day beyond that 15th day, say you have 1 year and 1 day of service, then you wouldn't be able to reach it if it gets to 16 days missed. And so this is going to be a massive point of contention. And that's why we said yesterday that we were really, really hoping that a deal could get done before games start falling off the board, because this is going to add so much complexity to an already complex and difficult situation. So the league understands this and they want to squeeze out the players. The players understand what the league is doing. And I want to point out the players took to social media and are very united in their positions. A couple of Giants, including Alex Wood and Evan Longoria, have been pretty active on social media here. Alex Wood said yesterday, for what it's worth, MLB has pumped to the media last night and today that there's momentum toward a deal. Now saying the players' tone has changed. So if a deal isn't done today, it's our fault. This isn't a coincidence. We've had the same tone all along. We just want a fair deal / to play ball. Kevin Pillar said, wish MLB would use some of their PR tactics to promote the stars in our game. Travis Shaw says, this was so easily avoidable, so easy. That's what makes this even more frustrating. Sad day for the sport. Anthony Rizzo, to the fans, we will miss you most. To the younger generation of baseball players, this is for you. Evan Longoria says, watching MLB Network now. Wow. I'd just like one thing. If times are so tough for these clubs financially over the last 5 years, show us the financials. Be transparent. I guess we'll see you when we see you, fans. Michael Lorenzen, as Rob Manfred has his press conference and is giggling and laughing at moments in this press conference. Michael Lorenzen says, have no clue how he has the ability to laugh about anything right now. Mind is blown. Marcus Stroman says, fans, this man doesn't care about any of y'all. Don't get it twisted. The players are ready to perform, compete, interact with all of you. However, Manfred has been ruining our game while playing puppet boy to the owners. That's a fact. We remain ready and anxious to play. It goes on. I mean, James McCann says, yes, the union has struck a different note today. Of course, just another tactic trying to control the narrative. Same thing we have already seen over and over. Nothing new here. And then there was this article in some Toronto newspaper talking to Ross Stripling, who's their union rep, and he said that the league kind of bombarding them at the late hours of the previous day when they met for 16 and a half hours. They tried to sneak things into their proposal, thinking that these dumb baseball players would be tired and not notice after midnight. And so harsh rhetoric between the two sides right now, but that is where we stand. So coming up next, we're going to shift our attention to the National League West bullpen picture. It's actually quite intriguing, so you're not going to want to miss that. So stay tuned for that conversation as we continue to compare these different teams in a minute. But first, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. I know that sounds delicious, but you might be thinking, how is that possibly healthy? Go to BuiltBar.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories and just 4 grams of sugar to go along with 17 grams of protein. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Random example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store, $216 from Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, here we go. We are going to shift our attention a little bit. I know it is depressing what's going on right now with the MLB lockout, but hopefully they get back to the negotiating table soon. Both sides did leave Florida. It was kind of the culmination of a week of negotiating, and apparently the MLBPA is headed back to New York. The league has said that because of the MLBPA needing to travel, realistically a deal could not be done until Thursday, which is tomorrow, which prompted them to cancel the first 2 series of the year. Again, it's all negotiable. The players can demand that they make up those games or that they at least get paid for the missed games, so we shall see. It's not pretty right now, but hopefully, and they're under legal obligation to get back to the negotiating table as soon as possible. So anyway, shifting our attention a little bit, we're going to keep doing this every day, comparing the National League West teams, and today we're looking at the bullpens. Yesterday we looked at the starting pitching. So I'm just kind of scrolling through on Fangraphs. That Fangraphs has their depth charts, and according to I totally don't agree with these rankings. So the Dodgers bullpen ranks the best in the division and 4th best in baseball, and I'd probably have the Dodgers at number 1, although Kenley Jansen is a free agent, and so is Joe Kelly. So they're losing some significant names potentially, but Blake Trinan, that dude is just nasty. And then Brusdar Graterol is also nasty. They've got Daniel Hudson kind of quietly. They've got some other names. Tommy Kahnle coming back from an injury. Alex Vesia had a breakout kind of season. So I think the Dodgers bullpen is going to be quite effective. But let's point out that the Giants bullpen had the best earned run average in the major leagues in 2021. Does that necessarily mean they're going to do it again? Of course not. But this depth chart lists the Giants bullpen at number 21, I think, just way the heck down, 22. And I just don't buy that. I mean, they've got pretty much every single guy with an ERA of at least 4. The only exception being Camilo Doval at 3.7, and literally everybody else in this projection is over 4. And if I had an opportunity to bet that would be wrong, I would bet my life's savings on this, because I mean, we can check back at the end of the year. I just don't think that's going to happen. They don't have the big name in this bullpen, but every single guy can be effective, and they're deep. And they've got guys, if somebody's not effective, a lot of these guys have options, and they could send somebody down and bring somebody else back up. So I'm going to put the Giants bullpen at second in this division behind the Dodgers. I just think the Dodgers also get the most out of their players. They're also deep, but Blake Trinan, that guy is just so nasty. The way he's got that heavy sinker and then the slider, it's just a nasty combination, and he's very, very tough. But the Giants have Tyler Rogers, Camilo Doval, Jake McGee. To me, that's a really solid back end of the bullpen. It remains to be seen if Camilo Doval can continue to do what he did towards the end of the year. But again, he's projected as the best one in this bullpen. So at least it's funny. Fangraphs believes in him. They just don't believe in anybody else. And it's, of course, a projection. I think that these are based on Steamer right now. It might be Steamer and Zips making up this projection. But for me, I'm thinking that I have the Padres next, even though I have to scroll way up to number 12 to find the Padres on this list. Their top reliever projected to be Pierce Johnson, who was on the Giants when they were really bad in like 2017, I believe. And then he went to Asia and played a while, and then he's come back and had a nice season with the Padres. But then Emilio Pagan has had his difficulties. Tim Hill is a pretty effective left-handed pitcher. I don't know. Drew Pomeranz, him coming back from his injury is significant, and when he comes back, it'll make a big difference. But I'm going to put the Giants ahead of the Padres here, and then we've got to scroll to find the D-backs listed at number 28 and the Rockies listed at number 30. I agree generally that those are two of the worst bullpens in the game. Bunch of kind of anonymous names. The D-backs did pick up Mark Melancon, so that'll be interesting to see him back in the NL West and trying to close out games for the D-backs. He's probably going to be their closer. But everybody else, I mean, it's just a who's who in terms of not actually who's this in terms of not knowing who these guys even are generally. It's just a bunch of random guys. And then the Rockies, man, the Rockies bullpen is in trouble. So thankfully the Giants are probably going to be able to beat up on these two bullpens. And it's kind of a coin flip. I would give the edge to the D-backs simply because Mark Melancon can probably be pretty effective. And I don't know that anybody in that Rockies bullpen is going to be all that effective. So anyway, that's how I rank them. Keep coming back for every single show. We're going to be doing this for some aspect of the team, including the manager and the defense and just every aspect of the team. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it, leaving a review, telling your friends and family to check us out. How about liking, commenting, subscribing on YouTube, all of that good stuff. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. We'll have a mailbag either on Thursday or Friday this week to finish out the week, and we'll continue to provide any updates about the lockout as well. Thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed today's show. Stay locked on Giants.